When it comes to ruthless trash talk in the UFC, no one did it quite like Chael Sonnen. For the self-proclaimed American Gangster, no topic was off limits.
Better think again, Vanderlei Silva, 3 months, you were the bad guy!
His insults were legendary, his delivery unmatched, and when he had someone in his sights, it always felt personal. Sure, some of it was just showmanship, but with a few fighters, you could tell the hate ran deep. These weren't just rivals, they were guys he hated.
This is pleasure. I don't like this guy.
So who were the fighters that really got under Sonnen's skin? Let's find out. Kicking off our list at number 5 is a fellow icon of insult, Tito Ortiz. Long before Chael Sonnen and Tito Ortiz were famous MMA stars, they both wrestled each other in a collegiate tournament. Sonnen won the match in under a minute, a fact he would happily bring up decades later. This early encounter planted the seeds of a rivalry that would blossom years later when both men had become legends of a different sport. For a long time, their careers ran on parallel tracks. Ortiz, the Huntington Beach bad boy, was one of the first true superstars of the UFC. Sonnen, the American Gangster, became a star later, using his incredible trash-talking ability to build massive fights with Anderson Silva and JonJones. The feud truly ignited when both fighters found themselves in Bellator MMA towards the end of their careers. With both men looking for a big, meaningful fight, pitting them against each other was a natural choice. Instantly, the insults began to fly, and it was clear this wasn't just about selling a fight. There was a genuine dislike between them.
I've won world titles. I've dominated over people who's been ranked in the top 5.
In fact, Sonnen didn't hesitate to talk trash about Ortiz's private life, and Ortiz didn't take that lightly.
That made money using their mouth as his ex-wife.
The buildup culminated in their main event fight at Bellator 170 in January 2017. When the cage door locked, the fight was explosive and short. Ortiz came out aggressively, and after a scramble, he managed to lock in a rear naked choke.
Now he's on the back, had to start early and he did.
In a rare sight, Ortiz got the last word. After years of being verbally dismantled by Sonnen, he stood victorious in the cage and delivered an emotional, triumphant post-fight speech, retiring on the spot after defeating his bitter rival. He had finally silenced the man who had talked circles around him for months. Though Sonnen would later dispute the finish and continue to throw verbal jabs, that night belonged to Tito Ortiz. Moving on to number 4, we have JonJones. In the summer of 2012, JonJones was set to defend his title against Dan Henderson at UFC 151. But just 8 days before the fight, Henderson pulled out with an injury. The UFC scrambled to save the card, and Chael Sonnen, never one to miss an opportunity, immediately stepped up and offered to take the fight on short notice. For the UFC, Sonnen was the perfect last-minute replacement, but JonJones and his camp didn't see it that way. They felt taking on a new opponent with a completely different style on such short notice wasn't worth the risk, so Jones declined. That decision led to UFC 151 being canceled, the first event in the company's history to be scrapped. Sonnen, naturally, seized the moment. He now had the perfect weapon to use against Jones. He was the man who was willing to fight, while the champion, in his eyes, had run away.
John's the best, but Chael's even better.
The UFC capitalized on the drama, but in a different way. Instead of just booking the fight, they made Sonnen and Jones the opposing coaches on season 17 of The Ultimate Fighter. For weeks, the two rivals were in close proximity, a setup designed for fireworks. By the time UFC 159 arrived in April 2013, Sonnen had successfully talked his way into a title shot that many felt he didn't deserve based on merit. The feud was no longer about rankings. It was about personality and pride. Jones was determined to punish Sonnen for his words, while Sonnen hoped to pull off the ultimate upset, built on the foundation of his verbal warfare.
I want to fight JonJones. I'm gonna fight JonJones.
When the cage door finally closed, however, the talk came to an abrupt end. JonJones proved why he was the king of the division. He completely overwhelmed Sonnen from the opening bell. He used his size, strength, and creativity to take Sonnen down and punish him with vicious elbows and punches. The fight was brutally one-sided, and the referee stepped in to stop it late in the first round. But the night had one more bizarre twist. As Jones stood up to celebrate his victory, He looked down and realized he had suffered a gruesome injury. His big toe was grotesquely broken and dislocated, bent at a nearly 90-degree angle. He hadn't even noticed it during the fight. Had Sonnen survived just 27 more seconds to the end of the round, the fight would have been stopped, and Chael Sonnen, by a technicality, would have become the new champion. But that was never meant to happen. Another fighter Sonnen hated the most was Michael Bisping. The feud between Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping was a clash between two of the best trash talkers in MMA history. For years, fans wondered who was better on the mic and in the cage, and in January 2012, they got their answer on just 1 week's notice. When Sonnen's original opponent for UFC on Fox 2 got injured, he stepped in to face Bisping in a high-stakes fight, with the winner earning a title shot. The short notice led to a brief but intense war of words between the two masters.
He's a great wrestler, but I'm a great fighter.
And fighting Chael Sonnen may be hazardous to one's health.
The fight itself was incredibly close and competitive, perfectly mirroring their verbal exchanges. It was a back-and-forth, 3-round war that showcased the strengths of both fighters. Sonnen repeatedly used his world-class wrestling to take Bisping down, controlling him on the mat for significant portions of the fight. However, Bisping proved difficult to hold down. When the final bell rang, it was genuinely difficult to know who had won. In the end, the judges rendered a unanimous decision, but the scores were tight. All 3 judges scored the bout 29-28 in favor of Chael Sonnen. Bisping was devastated, and he respectfully disagreed with the decision, believing his striking should have earned him the victory. Sonnen, in victory, was surprisingly complimentary, acknowledging how tough Bisping was. While their rivalry was short, it was a perfect snapshot of what made both men special. The next fighter on the list is the one who shared what might be Chael Sonnen's most intense and chaotic feud. The tension was so real, so raw, that you could practically feel the hatred burning between them. Who are we talking about? None other than Anderson Silva. Back in 2010, Anderson Silva was the middleweight king. He looked untouchable. His fights were becoming predictable, with many opponents showing up looking defeated before the first bell even rang. Then came Chael Sonnen. The sharp-tongued American gangster from Oregon wasn't just another contender. He could wrestle, he could fight, and more than anything, he could talk. Sonnen wasn't interested in just winning the belt. He wanted to destroy the legend of Anderson Silva, and he didn't hold back. Sonnen began a trash-talking campaign unlike anything the sport had ever seen.
Anderson Silva is easily the most unpopular fighter in this company.
The insults were so constant and so outrageous that they transformed Sonnen from a mid-level contender
Well, Anderson's a fraud. He's a liar.
into the sport's biggest villain and the must-see challenger to the king. This feud was so intense that DanaWhite decided that they should settle the feud in the octagon at UFC 117. Sonnen's hatred for Anderson was so obvious during the press conference.
This is going to be a one-sided pounding, and I'm swinging the hammer.
By the time they finally met in the cage in August 2010, the tension was off the charts. Everyone wanted to see the quiet champion finally silence the loud-mouthed challenger. But what happened next shocked the world. From the opening bell, Chael Sonnen did exactly what he promised he would do. For 4.5 rounds, the story was the same. Sonnen would land punches, take Silva down, and punish him on the mat. He was winning, and it wasn't even close. The invincible champion looked human, and the brash challenger was just minutes away from pulling off one of the biggest upsets in sports history. But greatness often reveals itself in moments of desperation. With less than 2 minutes left in the final round, a beaten and bruised Anderson Silva threw his legs up from his back and locked in a tight triangle armbar.
This is trouble! This is trouble!
Still, Sonnen refused to give Silva full credit. He claimed that the submission was a fluke, arguing that he had exposed the so-called best fighter in the world. Then things got even messier. Sonnen tested positive for synthetic testosterone and was suspended, pushing the rematch further down the road. But that didn't stop him. He kept talking, kept poking, and kept the feud burning for 2 more years.
I will slap his manager as quick as I will slap his wife on the ass.
After beating Brian Stann at UFC 136, Sonnen grabbed the mic and unleashed one of the most iconic post-fight callouts ever.
Anderson Silva, you absolutely suck.
The second fight, at UFC 148 in July 2012, was one of the biggest events in UFC history. The entire MMA world tuned in to see the final chapter. This time, the fight played out differently. After Sonnen dominated the first round in familiar fashion, Silva adapted. In the second round, Silva took control.
Chael's in trouble. Hit it!
Anderson Silva was, once again, the undisputed champion. In the end, Anderson Silva had proven his greatness twice. Years later, the intense hatred has faded, replaced by a unique form of respect, born from having shared such a historic and personal battle. They created a story together, a perfect storm of personalities that captivated millions and defined an era of mixed martial arts. And taking the #1 spot is another Brazilian fighter, Wanderlei Silva. Their story of hatred began, as many of Sonnen's feuds did, with his words. While Sonnen was busy targeting Anderson Silva, he often cast a wide net of insults over all Brazilian fighters, a tactic that was bound to attract the fury of a man like Wanderlei Silva.
That, Wanderlei, is how you threaten somebody, dummy.
Wanderlei Silva wasn't just any fighter. He was a national icon in Brazil and a legend from the savage days of Pride in Japan. Known for his fierce pride and terrifying aggression, he was never going to stay silent while someone insulted his country or its fighters. So, he fired back, publicly calling Sonnen out and demanding an apology. The UFC saw the drama brewing and knew exactly what to do. They made them rival coaches on The Ultimate Fighter, Brazil 3. It was chaos from day one. Sonnen kept up the trash talk, and Wanderlei was clearly ready to snap. He wanted Sonnen to show respect, or at least say sorry, but Sonnen wasn't in the business of backing down.
I am not going to apologize. I only have a problem with you. Step aside.
Eventually, it boiled over. During one heated argument, Sonnen told Wanderlei he was the reason he even had a job. That was it. Wanderlei charged him, and the two brawled in the middle of the gym in front of the cameras.
I can't let you get close.
Despite the brawl and Sonnen publicly calling out Wanderlei after one of his UFC matches, the planned fight at the end of the season fell apart. Wanderlei got injured, and when he later avoided a random drug test, things fell apart completely.
Wanderlei Silva! Met you, I didn't know they could stack crap that high!
The fight was canceled, and the rivalry seemed destined to end in chaos without a real finish. Years passed, and both men eventually found their way to Bellator MMA. With a new promotion came a new opportunity to finally settle the score. Bellator immediately booked the grudge match that the world had been waiting years to see. The press conferences leading up to their fight at Bellator 180 in New York City were just as intense as expected. When the cage door finally closed in June 2017, the fight itself was almost secondary to the years of drama. Sonnen, true to his style, used his superior wrestling to take Wanderlei down repeatedly. He controlled the fight from the top position, smothering the legendary striker and preventing him from unleashing his famous barrages. In the end, Chael Sonnen won a clear, unanimous decision. He had finally backed up his years of talk with a victory in the cage.